The reformed Galactic Council convened 6 months after the end of the war. The chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed. New delegates sat in several sections, representing governments that had fallen or reformed in the wake of the conflict. The Quintari section was occupied by civilian leaders who had overthrown the old military regime. Ambassador Unji took her place at the human section, no longer standing alone at the speaking platform to plead her case. This time, when she stood, the entire chamber fell silent immediately. 6 months ago, I stood before you and begged for help, she began. You dismissed me. You laughed. You told us to accept our place as newcomers and be grateful you allowed us to exist. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was believing we would simply accept being victims. She gestured to the displays showing the current state of the galaxy. The war is over, but the damage remains. Not just the physical damage, but the damage to trust. Many species now fear humanity. They worry we will use our military superiority to dominate the galaxy. They wonder if we're conquerors who simply waited for an excuse. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Let me be clear, Yunji continued. We are not conquerors. We never wanted to dominate you. We wanted to live alongside you as equals, but you wouldn't allow that. You insisted on a hierarchy where older species looked down on younger ones, where might made right, where new species had to accept whatever treatment they received. She pulled up a new proposal on the displays. Earth proposes a new council structure, one with actual enforcement mechanisms, one where grievances are investigated and addressed, one where breaking treaties has consequences, and one where every species, regardless of how long they've been in space, has an equal voice. Chairman Veltrax, still holding his position despite the disgrace of his species, studied the proposal. This would fundamentally change how the council operates. Many of our traditional practices would be eliminated. Yes, Yunji said simply. Your traditional practices led to war. They led to millions of deaths. They led to this. Perhaps it's time for new traditions. The proposal passed after 3 days of debate, not because every species agreed, but because no one dared oppose humanity's wishes anymore. It was exactly what Yunji had feared. They weren't being respected. They were being feared. Elder Xiphus, the oldest living being in the galaxy, finally requested to address the council. The Trell had been silent throughout the war, watching but not participating. Xiphus was over 3,000 years old, and many considered him the wisest being alive. When he spoke, people listened. I must share something the council has forgotten, he said, his voice weak with age but still commanding. This is not the first time my people encountered humans. 600 years ago, when humans still fought with swords and bows on their home world, a Trell exploration vessel crashed on Earth. The humans rescued our crew, cared for them, and helped repair their ship. The chamber went silent. This was news to everyone, including the humans. Before leaving, the Trell captain asked the human leader why they helped alien beings they had never seen before. The human said something my people never forgot. Because you needed help and we could give it. Such simple reasoning. Such pure compassion. Xiphus looked around the chamber. The captain left a warning in our archives. He said that if humans ever reach the stars, we must treat them with respect. Not because we should fear them, though he suspected they would become formidable, but because a species with such capacity for both compassion and determination would reshape the galaxy. We were warned, and we forgot. The revelation shook the council. Humans had been kind to aliens even when they were primitive by galactic standards. They had helped without expecting anything in return. And now, centuries later, they were powerful enough to destroy the galaxy, but were instead trying to fix its broken systems. Captain Dajan found himself assigned to a new role, training the first joint species military force. The idea was to create a council defense fleet that could respond to pirates, raiders, and other threats without requiring humans to act as enforcers. It was awkward at first. Species that had spent months watching humans dismantle the Quintari military were now learning human tactics. Dajan was patient but firm. The key to human military success isn't our technology, he explained to a mixed group of officers. It's our coordination. We train together, we plan together, and we trust each other. That's what makes us effective. A Korthan officer raised a claw. But how do we build that kind of trust? By working together, Dajan said. By proving to each other that we can be relied on. Trust isn't given, it's earned. Commander Yuna led the training program for Special Forces. She had volunteered for the role, seeing it as a chance to build bridges. Her students included warriors from a dozen species, all learning human boarding tactics and ground combat techniques. "Why do humans fight so differently?" a Maruvian student asked. "You don't care about honor or glory. We care about winning," Yuna said. "Not because we love war, but because we want to end it as quickly as possible. The longer a fight lasts, the more people die on both sides. So we train to be efficient. We study our opponents. We find the quickest path to victory. That's not about lacking honor. It's about respecting life enough to not waste it in pointless combat." Admiral Minho oversaw the gradual reduction of Earth's military to peacetime levels. Thousands of ships were being decommissioned. Their crews returned to civilian life. But everyone knew the shipyards remained. If needed, Earth could rebuild its fleet in months. The galaxy would never again underestimate human industrial capacity. "Do you think we'll ever be trusted again?" an aide asked him. Minho considered the question. "Trust takes time. We shattered the galaxy's illusions about humanity. They thought we were weak, peaceful, almost harmless. Now they know we can be dangerous when provoked. It will take years, maybe generations, before they see us as partners rather than potential threats." Dr. Solgi established the Institute for Human-Alien Understanding, with branches on multiple worlds. Her mission was to help species learn about each other, to prevent the kind of misunderstandings that led to war. One of her first projects was a series of cultural exchange programs. Young beings from different species would spend time living with other species, learning their customs and perspectives. The hope was that the next generation would grow up with better understanding than their parents had. Captain Jinwoo, no longer enforcing a blockade, found himself leading patrols of the major trade routes. Pirates had become bolder during the war, and someone needed to protect shipping. His ship, the Retribution, had been renamed the Guardian. It was a small change, but a significant one, from instrument of punishment to protector. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call," his communications officer reported. "Quintari cargo vessel under attack by raiders. Set course," Jinwoo ordered without hesitation. "Maximum speed." They arrived to find the cargo ship's shields failing. Jinwoo's ship easily drove off the raiders, who fled at the sight of a human warship. The Quintari captain contacted them, his voice shaking with fear. "Thank you," he said. I thought you would let us die. After what our military did." "Your military committed crimes," Jinwoo said. "You're just trying to make an honest living. We don't have a problem with you." It was a small gesture, but word spread. Humans were protecting everyone, even former enemies. Slowly, carefully, trust began to grow. 5 years after the war, a human child named Nari was born on a space station orbiting a distant world. She was the first human born into a galaxy where human meant something different than it had before. Not weak, not to be dismissed, but also not conquerors or tyrants. Nari would grow up in a galaxy being slowly reshaped by human influence. The Council had real power now, with mechanisms to address grievances before they exploded into violence. New species were welcomed as equals rather than dismissed as primitives. Pirates and raiders faced swift justice from a reformed Council defense force, but humans never forgot the cost of that change. On Earth, in orbit around Luna, a memorial floated in space. It bore the names of every human who died in the attacks that led to war. 2.5 million names carved in stone that would last for millennia. At the center, one phrase was inscribed larger than the rest. They were warned. "We tried, never again." Ambassador Yunji, now retired from the Council, visited the memorial regularly. She would float in space, reading the names, remembering faces. She had survived to see the peace she worked for, but the cost haunted her. "Do you regret it?" Captain Dajan asked her during one visit. He had also retired, but they remained friends. "I regret that it was necessary," Yunji said. "I regret every death, human and alien alike. But I don't regret standing up for our people. Someone had to draw the line. Someone had to say no more. I just wish we didn't have to prove our point with blood." President Ji-yoon, serving her final term, addressed Earth one last time. "When we entered the galaxy, we hoped to find friends. Instead, we found bullies who needed to be taught a lesson. We taught them perhaps too well. Now we must teach them something else. That strength should be used to protect, not to dominate. That power should serve justice, not pride." The trials began 3 weeks after the last Quintari military installation fell. Dr. Silgi, a xenobiologist who had spent years studying Council species, found herself called as an expert witness. The courtroom on Luna was built to accommodate beings from different worlds, with specialized environments for each species. Thousands watched in person, and billions more across the galaxy watched via broadcast. Warlord Kragish sat in the defendant's section, his scales still bright despite his captivity. He refused to acknowledge the court's authority, remaining silent except to occasionally hiss insults at the human judges. The prosecutor presented evidence of the attack on New Busan. They showed recordings of Quintari ships targeting evacuation vessels. They played intercepted communications where Kragesh's officers celebrated the destruction of civilian targets. They documented every death, showing faces and names of the dead. 2.4 million people, each one recorded and remembered. Then it was Dr. Silgi's turn to testify. The prosecutor asked her to explain human nature to the court. Humans are persistence hunters by evolutionary history, she began. On Earth, our ancestors would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to never give up, to keep coming no matter how long it takes. This is why we kept trying to negotiate even after repeated attacks. We wanted to avoid war, so we persisted in seeking peace. She pulled up displays showing human biology. We are also social pack coordinators. We evolved in groups, learning to work together to survive. This is why our military tactics seem so coordinated. We're not just following orders. We're thinking as a group, anticipating each other's actions. It's in our nature. And pattern recognition, she continued. Humans are exceptional at seeing patterns and using them to predict future events. We studied your species for 30 years. We analyzed your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses, not because we wanted to attack you, but because we wanted to be prepared if you attacked us. This is basic human survival instinct. A Korthan observer interrupted. Are you saying humans are naturally warlike? No, Seolgi said firmly. We're naturally cautious. There's a difference. Humans have fought terrible wars among ourselves. We know the cost of conflict. That's exactly why we tried so hard to avoid this one. We know what we're capable of, and it frightened us. We hoped we would never have to show you. Ambassador Thane and Orvathi, who had previously dismissed human concerns, sat in the gallery, taking notes. After Silgi's testimony, he requested permission to visit Earth itself. He wanted to understand these beings who had shocked the galaxy. President Ji-yoon approved the visit personally and arranged for Thane to tour Earth cities, industrial centers, and even some of the military facilities. What he saw amazed and disturbed him in equal measure. Earth was unified in a way no other species had achieved. Despite having different cultures, languages, and beliefs, humans had come together under a single government. They had maintained peace among themselves for over a century. Their entire planet worked toward common goals. How did you do this? Thane asked during a visit to the United Earth headquarters in Geneva. Most species remained divided even after achieving space travel. We learned the hard way, Ji-yoon said. We fought terrible wars among ourselves, wars that nearly destroyed our planet. We had weapons that could have ended all life on Earth. But we chose to put them aside and work together. It took time, generations, but we did it, because we understood that unity was the only way to survive. Thane visited factories that could produce warships at incredible speed. He toured academies where human children learned strategy, history, and critical thinking. He watched military exercises where human forces practiced coordinated attacks against simulated alien threats. The exercises had been running for 30 years, constantly updated with new intelligence about council species. You've been preparing for war since the day you met us, Thane said, finally understanding. No, Ji-yoon corrected. We've been preparing for the possibility of war. There's a difference. We hoped it would never come. We worked hard to prevent it. But we knew that hope wasn't a strategy, so we prepared, just in case. Files marked Classified Architect Project began leaking to the Galactic press. They revealed the existence of a human planning group that had been analyzing worst-case scenarios since first contact. Every treaty negotiation, every diplomatic exchange, every piece of technology sharing had been evaluated for potential military implications. Some species found this disturbing, seeing it as evidence of human duplicity. Others found it impressive, a sign of strategic thinking they had failed to match. A few found it terrifying, realizing that humans had been quietly planning how to defeat them for decades. The truth was more nuanced. The Architect Project wasn't about planning for conquest. It was about planning for survival. Humans had entered a galaxy full of species more advanced, more numerous, and more established. They needed to ensure their survival if things went wrong, so they planned, analyzed, and prepared. One document in particular shocked the Council. It was titled Threat Assessment Galactic Council. Combined forces, the analysis concluded, that even the full combined military of all 17 Council species would struggle against Earth's actual fleet strength. The humans had built enough ships to fight the entire galaxy if necessary, but they hadn't wanted to. Every page of the report emphasized that war was the worst outcome. The whole purpose of the preparation was to deter conflict, to make it clear that attacking Earth would be too costly. The tragedy was that the Council never saw the preparation because humans had hidden it so well. Captain Dajan, back in his diplomatic role, found himself in a strange position. Alien leaders who had once dismissed him now sought his counsel. They wanted to understand human thinking, human strategy, human intentions. "What do you want from us?" a Trell ambassador asked him during a private meeting. "You have the superior military. You could demand anything. We want what we always wanted," Dajan said. "Partnership, fair treatment, the chance to exist peacefully alongside you. The only thing that's changed is that you now understand we have the means to enforce that if necessary. Do you plan to conquer the galaxy?" Dajan shook his head. "Conquest requires holding territory against hostile populations. It's expensive, inefficient, and morally wrong. We don't want your worlds. We just want you to leave ours alone." Meanwhile, the blockade of Quintari space continued. Captain Jinwoo's fleet maintained watch, ensuring no military vessels entered or left. But humanitarian ships were allowed through freely. Medical supplies, food, and other necessities flowed into Quintari territory without interruption. "Why are you feeding us?" a Quintari civilian asked during one inspection. "We're your enemies." "No," the human inspector said. "Your government is our enemy. You're just a person trying to live your life. We don't have a problem with you." It was a distinction that confused many species. How could humans be so ruthlessly efficient in combat but so careful about civilian welfare? How could they destroy military targets with cold precision, but provide aid to enemy civilians? The answer lay in human history. Humans had learned, through terrible experience, that punishing civilians for their government's actions only created more enemies. True peace required showing people that you weren't their enemy, even when fighting their government. 3 months into the blockade, something unexpected happened. Quintari civilians, tired of their leadership's refusal to acknowledge the war crimes, began protesting. They had seen the trial evidence. They knew what their military had done. And they were ashamed. The protests grew larger each day. Quintari citizens demanded their government surrender the remaining war criminals and accept responsibility. They called for new leadership, for reform, for peace with humanity. Admiral Minho watched the protests from Earth. "We should have expected this," he said to his staff. "We forgot that most beings just want to live in peace. It's always the leaders who cause problems." The Quintari military leadership, seeing their own people turn against them, finally crumbled. Warlord Kregish's remaining allies surrendered themselves to human custody. The Quintari civilian government issued a formal apology and requested terms for peace. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Yunji stood before the assembled delegates. Many of the faces that had mocked her months ago now looked at her with fear or respect. "The war is over," she said. "The Quintari government has surrendered all war criminals and acknowledged their crimes. Reparations have been arranged. The blockade will be lifted." She paused, looking at each delegate. "We wanted to be your partners. You forced us to be your wardens. This is not the role we desired. But if you leave us no choice, we will accept it." "What happens now?" Chairman Veltrax asked quietly. He looked smaller now, diminished by the realization of how wrong he had been. "Now we talk about building a better system," Yunji said. "One where new species aren't dismissed and mocked. One where grievances are addressed before they explode into war. One where law actually means something." The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what kind of peace humanity would impose. Commander Yuna stood in the drop bay of the assault ship, checking her armor one last time. Around her, 50 members of Earth's Special Orbital Tactics Division prepared for deployment. They were the best humanity had to offer, trained for boarding actions and ground combat in every environment imaginable. For 30 years they had trained in secret. Now they would show the galaxy what human special forces could do. 5 minutes to target, the pilot announced. Their target was Quintari Military Command Station 7, a fortress hanging in orbit above the Quintari homeworld. Intelligence said Warlord Krigesh was inside. He was the one who had ordered the attack on New Busan. He was responsible for 2.4 million deaths, and Yuna was going to bring him to justice. The assault ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, already moving at combat speed. Defensive fire from the station began immediately, but human point defense systems shot down every missile and bolt of energy. The ship didn't slow. It crashed through the station's shields like they were made of paper, its reinforced hull designed for exactly this kind of attack. "Go, go, go," Yuna shouted. Her team launched from the drop bay, crossing the space between ship and station in armored suits. Magnetic grapples locked onto the hull. Cutting torches sliced through the armor. They were inside in seconds. The Quintari defenders were waiting, armed and ready, but they had never faced opponents like this. Humans moved differently than other species. They were faster, more aggressive, and they worked together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Within minutes, Yuna's team had secured the breach point and was pushing deeper into the station. On the ground, young Marine Taehyun experienced his first real combat. His unit had landed on a Quintari military base that housed a fleet command center. The briefing said the base commander had personally led several raids on human colonies. That made this personal. Taehyun and his squad moved through the base corridors, their weapons ready. They encountered a defensive position, Quintari soldiers behind portable barriers. In the old days, before humans arrived, battles between council species followed certain rules. You announced your attack, gave your enemy a chance to surrender honorably, and tried to minimize casualties on both sides. Humans didn't fight like that. Taehyun's squad used grenades to stun the defenders, then rushed the position before they could recover. It was brutal and efficient. The Quintari soldiers, trained in honorable combat, didn't know how to respond to an enemy that simply wanted to win as quickly as possible. As they moved deeper into the base, Taehyun felt something he hadn't expected. Anger. Real, burning anger. These Quintari had killed his aunt and her family on New Busan. They had laughed about it, celebrated it as a great victory. Now they were learning that humans remembered their dead. Humans held grudges, and humans would cross the galaxy to make sure justice was served. Target secured, his squad leader announced. The base commander was taken alive, stunned and restrained. He would face trial for his crimes. Across 12 Quintari systems, similar scenes played out. Human forces struck with precision and overwhelming force. They disabled military installations, captured commanders, and left civilian areas completely untouched. The message was clear. Humans could have targeted cities and civilians, but they chose not to. They were better than that, even when seeking revenge. Counselor Thess of the Maruvian delegation watched the reports with growing horror. She had been one of the few voices arguing for better treatment of humans, but she had been ignored. Now she was watching the consequences of that decision. She contacted Ambassador Yunji, requesting an immediate meeting. Gunji agreed, and they met in a neutral location, a small observation deck with a view of the stars. "You must stop this," Thess began. "The Quintari are being destroyed. Yes, they committed crimes, but this level of retaliation is proportional," Yunji interrupted, her voice cold. "They killed millions of our civilians. We are taking military targets only. We have gone out of our way to avoid Quintari civilian casualties. If we wanted revenge, we could turn their worlds to glass. But we're not monsters. We're just done being victims." "But where does it end?" Thess asked. "It ends when every person responsible for attacks on human colonies is in custody, awaiting trial. It ends when the Quintari Empire acknowledges its crimes and pays reparations. It ends when the galaxy understands that humans will not tolerate being treated as lesser beings." Thess looked out at the stars. "You were warned. That's what you said in the council chamber. You warned us not to mistake your patience for weakness. And you laughed," Yunji said. "All of you laughed. You thought we were bluffing because we only showed you a tiny fraction of our strength. Did you never wonder why our diplomatic fleet was so small? Did you never question why a species with our industrial capacity only fielded 1,000 ships? We assumed you were simply not very advanced." "You assumed we were stupid," Yunji said. "You assumed we would broadcast our true military strength to potential enemies. Every human child learns about strategy and planning. We study history, our own and others. We know what happens to species that show all their cards. So we showed you what we wanted you to see, and we built our real fleet in secret. The truth was even more complex than Unji suggested. Back on Earth, investigators were uncovering evidence of something called the Architect. It appeared to be either an artificial intelligence or a group of human strategic planners who had been planning for this contingency since first contact with alien species. Files dating back 30 years showed detailed analyses of every Council species' military capabilities, complete with plans for countering them. The humans who designed Earth's warships had studied alien technology and built vessels specifically to exploit weaknesses. The diplomats who negotiated treaties had included clauses that would benefit Earth in case of war. Even the locations of human colonies had been chosen with strategic value in mind. It was also calculated, so perfectly planned, that some council members were convinced humans must be naturally warlike. They didn't understand that humans simply believed in being prepared. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst was an old human saying. The galaxy was now learning what that meant. Warlord Kragesh was captured after his command station fell. Yuna herself placed the restraints on him, ignoring his protests about honor and proper treatment of military commanders. "You gave up any right to honor when you targeted civilians," she told him coldly. His trial would be held on Luna, broadcast to the entire galaxy. Humans wanted everyone to see their justice system at work. They wanted the galaxy to understand that this wasn't about revenge or conquest. It was about accountability. Captain Jinwoo commanded the warship Retribution, one of the vessels now enforcing a blockade around Quentari space. No military vessels were allowed in or out. Humanitarian aid was permitted, but every ship was thoroughly scanned. The Quentari were effectively trapped in their own territory. "Sir, we're getting a lot of refugee requests," his communications officer reported. "Quentari civilians wanting to flee the Empire." "Process them through the standard channels," Jinwoo said. "Anyone not wanted for war crimes can leave. We're not holding innocent people prisoner." It was a subtle message, one that confused many in the galaxy. Humans were at war with the Quentari Empire. But they weren't at war with the Quentari people. They understood the difference between a government and its citizens. It was another thing that set them apart from other species. Admiral Minho received reports from all 12 systems. Every target had been secured with minimal casualties. Earth's forces had performed flawlessly, but he took no joy in the victory. "This shouldn't have happened," he said to his staff. "We tried everything to avoid this war. They left us no choice." In the council chamber, the remaining delegates gathered in shocked silence. They had just watched humanity dismantle one of the galaxy's major military powers in less than a week. The Quentari Empire, which had stood for 3,000 years, was now under human blockade with its military leadership in custody, and the humans had barely broken a sweat. Fleet reports suggested less than 5% of Earth's revealed forces had been involved in the attacks. That meant 47,000 warships were still in reserve, waiting if needed. The galaxy was beginning to understand a terrible truth. The humans they had mocked and dismissed were possibly the most dangerous species in known space, and they had been holding back the whole time. The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built by species far older than humanity. Inside, representatives from 17 different worlds sat in their designated sections, their forms as varied as the planets they called home. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in specialized tanks. But all of them shared one thing in common. They looked down on the humans. Ambassador Yunji stood at the speaking platform, her dark suit crisp and professional. She had given this same speech 3 times before. Each time the result was the same. But she had to try again. Behind her, holographic images showed the smoking ruins of mining colony Perseus 7. Bodies floated in the vacuum where the dome had been breached. 42,000 people had died there last week. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Yunji began, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. "This is the 7th attack on human settlements in the past 4 months. The evidence clearly shows these raids were conducted by Quentari military vessels. We demand immediate action." Chairman Veltrax, the Quentari representative, made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. His scaled face twisted into what might have been a smile. "The human complains again. Perhaps if your species was not so eager to claim every worthless rock in space, you would not face such difficulties." Several other council members made sounds of agreement. The Korthan delegate tapped his claws against his seat in what Yunji had learned was their version of applause. "These are legally registered human territories," Yunji said, keeping her voice level. "Registered with this very council 30 years ago when Earth joined the galactic community. The attacks violate 17 different treaties. Treaties written when the council believed humans might be worth including," another delegate said. "Perhaps we were too hasty in that assessment." Yunji felt her jaw tighten. She had practiced this moment, prepared for it. She looked directly at Chairman Veltrax. "We have shown restraint because we value peace. Do not mistake our patience for weakness." This time the entire chamber erupted in that sound the translator called laughter. Even species that supposedly supported Earth remained silent, unwilling to defend the newcomers. Captain Dajan watched the broadcast from the bridge of the Harmony's Promise, humanity's flagship diplomatic vessel. He was a tall man with gray at his temples, a veteran of Earth's naval forces who had transitioned to this new role reluctantly. Around him his crew worked quietly, but he could feel their anger. "Sir," Hyunwoo said from the tactical station. The young officer's voice was tight with frustration. "We have 17 warships in this sector. The Quintari raiding party that hit Perseus 7 had 8. We tracked them to their base." "We could end this." Dajan shook his head. "Our orders are clear. We defend human ships and stations, but we do not pursue into contested space." "But it's not contested," Hyunwoo insisted. "We registered it first. The council recognized it. They're the ones breaking the rules. And yet we're the ones ordered to back down," Dajan said quietly. He understood Hyunwoo's anger because he shared it. Every order to withdraw, every command to show restraint ate at him. He had spent 20 years in Earth's military before this assignment. He knew what his ships could do. He knew what Earth's military could do. But the politicians had made their choice: integrate peacefully no matter the cost. The tactical display showed the Quintari base, a massive weapons platform hidden in an asteroid field. Hyunwoo was right. They could eliminate it easily. But orders were orders. "Sir, incoming message from Earth Command," the communications officer said. "We're being ordered to withdraw from the Talos sector entirely." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. The Talos sector contained 6 human mining colonies and 2 terraforming projects. Thousands of civilians lived and worked there. "What about the colonies?" Hyunwoo asked. "They're being evacuated," Dajan said, reading the orders on his command screen. "Earth is choosing to abandon the sector rather than risk further conflict." He could see his crew's faces. Some looked angry. Others looked ashamed. A few looked sick. This was what they had become, a species that ran from bullies because they feared the consequences of fighting back. 3 weeks later, the attack came. Not on an isolated mining colony this time, but on New Busan, a fully established human world with a population of 3 million. The Quintari didn't just raid it. They destroyed it. Orbital bombardment turned cities to glass. Those who tried to evacuate found their ships targeted by Quintari fighters. Yunji watched the reports come in from her office on the council station. The numbers kept rising. 10,000 dead, 100,000, 500,000. By the time the attack ended, 2.4 million people were gone. Only those in the deepest bunkers survived. She sat in silence for a long time, staring at the images. Then she began writing her final message to the council. The emergency session convened 12 hours later. This time, Yunji didn't bother with evidence or legal arguments. She stood at the speaking platform and read from a prepared statement. "For 30 years, Earth has sought peaceful integration into the galactic community. We have followed every rule, honored every treaty, and swallowed every insult. We did this because we believed in the promise of a united galaxy. We believed that reason and law could prevail over violence." She paused, looking at each council member in turn. "You have shown us we were wrong. The Quintari have now murdered over 2.5 million human civilians. This council has done nothing. You have dismissed our complaints, mocked our appeals, and laughed at our warnings." Chairman Veltrax started to interrupt, but Yunji's voice cut through. "I am not finished. Earth hereby issues a final ultimatum to this council and to the Quintari Empire. Cease all hostile actions against human settlements within 72 hours. Surrender those responsible for war crimes to face human justice. If you do not comply, Earth will consider all treaties void and will respond with every means at our disposal." Now Veltrax did laugh. "And what will you do, human? Send your tiny fleet against the combined might of the council?" You have perhaps 1,000 ships. The Quintari alone field 10,000. You are outmatched in every way. Yunji's expression didn't change. You were warned. What happens next is on your heads, not ours. She left the chamber without waiting for dismissal. Behind her, the council erupted in debate and laughter. They thought they had won. They thought the humans were bluffing. They had no idea what was coming. On Earth, President Ji-yoon addressed the planet. My fellow humans, for 3 decades we have tried to be their friends. We have tried to earn their respect through peaceful means. They have answered us with contempt and murder. I have authorized our military to show them what humanity truly is. May whatever gods they believe in have mercy on them. Because we will not. In orbit around Earth, Mars, Europa, and a dozen other locations throughout the Sol system, shipyards that had been disguised as civilian facilities began to wake up. Doors that hadn't opened in 30 years slid apart. And from the darkness, humanity's true fleet began to emerge. The 72 hours passed in tense silence. Earth received no response from the Quintari Empire. The Galactic Council sent only a formal letter stating that Earth's ultimatum was inappropriate and not in keeping with proper diplomatic protocols. They suggested that humans should reconsider their emotional response and return to negotiations. Instead, the Quintari sent their 3rd battle fleet toward Sol system. Admiral Minho stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, watching the fleet approach. He was a stocky man with scars on his hands from his years working in the old Space Force. Back before first contact, he had been waiting for this moment for 30 years, though he had hoped it would never come. Fleet composition? He asked. 2,000 capital ships, escort vessels, and fighters, an analyst responded. It's one of their largest formations. They're not trying to hide it. They want us to see it, Minho said. They want us to be afraid. Are we giving them the warning, sir? Another officer asked. Minho shook his head. We gave them 72 hours. That was their warning. Activate Protocol Prometheus. Across the Sol system, signals went out to every hidden facility. On Mars, massive doors built into Olympus Mons itself began to open. In the asteroid belt, rocks that had seemed natural for 3 decades split apart to reveal hangar bays. Around Jupiter's moons, beneath Europa's ice, and in Ganymede's depths, more facilities came online. And in the Oort cloud, where no one had thought to look, the largest shipyards of all began to move. Sunho, a war correspondent who had been embedded with the diplomatic fleet, now found himself aboard a human dreadnought called the Righteous Fury. He had expected a military vessel, but nothing had prepared him for this. The ship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons he didn't recognize, and moved through space with impossible grace for something so massive. How many ships do we have? He asked the captain, a stern woman named Yuna. That's classified, she said, but you're about to see enough of them. The Quintari fleet reached Neptune's orbit, confident in their superiority. They had faced the human diplomatic fleet before and found it lacking. 1,000 human ships against their 2,000 seemed like acceptable odds for a quick victory. They had no idea they were facing 50,000. The human fleet emerged from stealth all at once. One moment, space appeared empty. The next, it was filled with warships. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, frigates, and fighter craft beyond counting. They appeared in perfect formation, surrounding the Quintari fleet on all sides. Admiral Minho's face appeared on every screen in the Quintari fleet. You were given a chance to surrender. You chose war. You will now learn the price of that choice. The Battle of Neptune lasted 47 minutes. Sunho recorded everything, his hands shaking as he watched the displays. Human tactics were nothing like what the galaxy had seen before. The other species fought for honor, for glory, for the chance to prove their warriors' courage. Humans fought to win, and they fought with a cold efficiency that was terrifying to watch. The human ships moved in coordinated groups, each one supporting the others. When a Quintari vessel fired, 3 human ships would already be moving to positions where they could hit its weak points. The humans had clearly studied every Council species technology for decades. They knew where the engines were vulnerable, where the shields were weakest, where the command centers sat, and their weapons were devastating. Railguns that punched through shields like they weren't there, missiles that could think for themselves, adjusting their approach to hit the most vulnerable spots, energy weapons that seemed to cut through armor like paper, and stranger things too. Weapons that made ships simply stop working, their systems overloaded by some kind of electromagnetic pulse. They're trying to run, Yuna said, watching her tactical display. Don't let them. Human fighters, sleeker and faster than anything the Quintari could field, cut off the escape routes. Any ship that tried to flee found itself disabled, its engines destroyed but its life support left intact. By the end, not a single human ship was destroyed. A few had taken damage but nothing serious. The Quintari fleet was in ruins. Some ships were nothing but debris. Others floated dead in space, their crews trapped inside. A few had surrendered and were already being boarded by human marines. Sunho broadcast everything to the galaxy. He showed the one-sided battle, the efficiency of human tactics, and the cold professionalism with which they dismantled their enemy. He also showed the aftermath, where human medics worked to rescue Quintari survivors, treating them with care even after what their empire had done. This is what humanity is, he said into his camera. They warned you. They begged for peace. And when you gave them war, they showed you they had been holding back the whole time. The galaxy watched in shock. The battle replays were analyzed by military experts from every council species. A Korthan strategist named Vren, considered one of the best tactical minds in known space, released a public statement that sent chills through the galactic community. I have reviewed the human attack at Neptune. I have one conclusion. This was not their full strength. The coordination, the tactics, the technology, all of it suggests planning that goes back decades. The humans did not scramble to respond to the Quintari threat. They were ready. They have always been ready. Every time we saw the human diplomatic fleet, we assumed that was their military. We were seeing what they wanted us to see. 1,000 ships, outdated designs, poor tactical formations. It was all theater. The humans built an armada in secret and let us think they were weak. The question now is, how much are they still hiding? President Ji-yoon addressed the galaxy from Earth. She was a small woman with steel in her eyes, and she spoke with quiet authority. For 30 years we have maintained a diplomatic fleet while building our true military in secret. We did this because we hoped we would never need it. We wanted to join your community as friends and partners. You saw our restraint as weakness. You saw our patience as cowardice. You murdered millions of our people and laughed at our pain. She paused, letting her words sink in. We are now broadcasting coordinates for every Quintari military installation within human-claimed space. You have 48 hours to evacuate them and surrender the commanders responsible for the attacks on our colonies. If you do not, we will come for them. And unlike you, when humans make a threat, we follow through. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but this time there was no laughter. Species that had mocked Earth now scrambled to distance themselves from the Quintari. Some proposed immediate sanctions against the Quintari Empire. Others suggested recognizing all of Earth's territorial claims. A few even proposed offering tribute to humanity. Chairman Veltrax stood before them, his scales pale with fear. This is madness. If we give in to the humans now, we show weakness. Every new species will think they can threaten the Council. The humans didn't threaten us, a Maruvian delegate said quietly. We threatened them. We ignored their pleas. We mocked their warnings. This is our doing, Veltrax, and now we must live with the consequences. The 48-hour deadline came and went. The Quintari Empire, proud and ancient, refused to surrender their commanders. They evacuated their military bases but sent a message stating that no Quintari officer would ever submit to human judgment. Admiral Minho read the message and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They still don't understand. Very well. Fleet commanders, you have your targets. Show them what humans do when someone hurts our families. The human fleet split into dozens of strike groups and vanished into faster-than-light travel. When they emerged, it was over military targets across 12 Quintari systems simultaneously, and this time there would be no restraint.